Hi, and we are live. I am so happy that we are here together to talk about staying power, how to keep the big job without losing yourself. If you are driven, exhausted, but quietly wondering, how the hell am I supposed to keep this going? Welcome. I see you. You worked your ass off to get here, the title, the paycheck, the calendar full of big meetings and even bigger expectations. But now it kind of feels like your life is happening in the margins. You don't want to quit and you don't want to coast. You want to live big, bold, and deeply without sacrificing everything you've built. And that's why we're here today, not to talk about burnout, but to talk about liberation. So before I get started, I always like to do just a quick check in. How are we feeling today? Take a deep breath. We're always so hyper focused on the to do list and what we're getting done. Take a deep breath and drop a one in the chat if you feel like I'm not going to cry. And a five if you're ready to party like a rock star. Yeah, there's music references. That's just me. I love music. So if you were keeping track, Party Like a Rock Star, that's Shot Boys. I'm Not Gonna Cry, that's Mary J. But here's something that's not music to our ears. I just read a Wall Street Journal article saying that job listings are going backwards. Long hours, competitive environments, hustle culture on full display, which is why this conversation is so important. Now it's time to step into your power, to speak your truth, and to lead with liberation at top of mind. I had a burnout wake up call myself, and it wasn't always clear. A few years ago, I took a sabbatical, not because I wanted to, but because I physically couldn't keep going. Burnout brought me to my knees. I had done everything right. I led teams, I crushed goals, I smiled through exhaustion, and it still cost me. What I learned in that space was this: you can't time block your way out of a broken system. You have to lead differently. You have to choose liberation over being the loyal martyr. Think about that. The loyal martyr. It's like we have loyalty inside our DNA. Wait, was that another music reference? Okay, I'm going to stop. I promise. I promise. I promise. Okay, let's talk about the hidden function, the hidden cost of having it all. Sometimes you have it all, right? Because I talked about like making the deadlines and crushing it. But high functioning burnout, it wears a pretty mask. You're still hitting deadlines, you still look polished, okay, like full face of makeup, but inside you are fried. Burnout doesn't always look like collapse. Sometimes it simmers behind smiles. It simmers behind, hey, how you doing today? Fine, I'm fine. Secretly, you're like clenching your teeth. And I think some of us kind of like latch on to that cliche, work smarter, not harder. But working smarter, not harder, it will still burn you out if you're always on. I had to unlearn this. Even smart work without boundaries, that means 10 p.m. slides that are perfect. But is that what we want? Productivity without peace? No, because that's burnout and lipstick. Overcapacity, it isn't like a time problem, it's a leadership problem. And when your calendar is full, but your impact feels diluted, it's not about optimization. It's about reclaiming power. I'm going to pause in that because sometimes we get so stuck in prioritization and productivity. It's not about that. It's about reclaiming power. I'll tell you a quick story. There was a quarterly exec meeting that I needed to prep 10 slides. It's an easy ask, right? 10 slides, but actually it's 30 backup slides. How many of you know about the backup slides? Not only were there backup slides, but there was a 12 tab financial model that's in Excel that has linked formulas. So you not only have to make sure the formulas work, but that the linkage is working. There's so much offline collaboration, stakeholder alignment. It's a lot to juggle. And I was doing a good job at trying to keep it all together. But of course, two unplanned things happen. One, leadership said, "Hey, you know that input? Turn it into an output and then work the numbers backwards. Let's see if we get something different." Okay. Tack on an additional 3 hours for a quick question and a bright idea. Got it. No problem. But I also had a kid that was homesick and I have to juggle with mom guilt. And I hadn't eaten in 12 hours. I'm just crunching on granola bars and caffeine. My slides were perfect, but I was empty. I thought my day in the spotlight would come because making sacrifices like this, I could do it, no problem. I thought that if I just kept proving myself, uh, things would work out for me. I would get tapped on the shoulder for that promotion. But something had to change. And I realized I was giving everything at work and leaving scraps for myself. Whew, that's hard to even say out loud. So I let's think about this. Picture your last perfect workday. You know, perfect workday. You nailed it, you crushed it, but what did you sacrifice to make that happen? If you have a pen handy, I want you to actually write it down. The one thing you gave up because you believed it was the cost of success. On my list, I have so many missed lunches because I had to eat at my desk. I have so many days of sunshine I missed because I refused to go outside or leave my chair until that deliverable was done. But was that worth it? Mel Robbins reminds us that working smarter is still burnout if your boundaries are broken. So, this is an opportunity to truly unlearn a cliche that I feel a lot of us hold dear to us. And it's that working smarter, not harder a bit. The real truth is smart doesn't save you if you're still self sacrificing. So we have to think about what are we working smarter toward? You prep something perfect while ignoring your own needs. Think about that. I'm sure you have. And then I want you to think about how did it feel after the applause? For me, I was crashing out right after. After I did a big presentation, worked on the follow-ups, I I walked away from everything. Don't call me, don't ask me to set up anything. But that's not me. I'm an outgoing person. I like being around people. I like sitting in the sun, but I had to isolate myself because I felt like I had to recharge. And is that what I really wanted? Hmm. Something to think about. So I hope you're thinking along and processing these thoughts because again, this is a conversation. My goal right now is just to give you some nuggets, just some thought exercises to truly question or evaluate what we consider to be our baseline. Because until we do that, we won't be liberated from, I guess, the leadership and the rules that are putting us in a spiral. And that's what will help us create better staying power. So let's talk a little bit about why balance is BS and what actually works. Often we think of self care as all of the external things. Let's get a pedicure, let's get a massage, let's book that big vacation. But let's think of self care as a strategy. So, more than spa time. It's not about more massages. Think about it like it's protecting your mental real estate. For me, I really use that theory, Let Them by Mel Robbins, just got to call that one out again. Um, because I appreciate moving in my own lane, being centered around my energy and letting people judge me, letting people misunderstand. It really helps me conserve my energy for what matters most. And it's freeing. And in doing that, looking at my energy, I'm also looking at micro rests as fuel and not as guilt triggers. Tiny pauses like walks or a killer playlist, even silence, can restore your clarity and joy. And you may think to yourself, like, yeah, I don't have time for that. Come on, you could squeeze in a quick walk between back to back meetings. You could crank up a killer playlist as drive into the office or en route to somewhere. Or how about this one? This is my favorite one is just driving in silence, allowing my mind to roam and my gaze to catch different things instead of thinking about my emails or heaven forbid listening to AI read my emails so I can think about it before I get into the office. Again, those are productivity traps that we are stuck in. And if we're talking about staying power, we have to flex. We have to do something different. Um, I used to think that I had to earn rest, like only after a 12-hour sprint could I sit down somewhere. But the day, I took a 10-minute walk between meetings, I came back crystal clear and it was a game changer. Typically, I'm the person that's annoyed. Come on, when are we going to get all these people together again in the room? Come on, we need to make this decision. And we need it now if we want to make the deadline. But instead, going outside, taking a quick walk, or even walking around a different floor can really refresh your mind and give you the fuel you need to refocus and recenter yourself. So, of course, I I like these thought exercises. So I want you to think about your busiest day. Busiest day, right? You walked into the office with your coffee, you're ready, or you sit down at your desk with your coffee, you're ready to go, and you open your email and you're like, oh my goodness, there's so many emails I need to get to. Where do I start? Before you even start, you're getting pinged. A Teams chat is popping up. Hey, we need you to do this. Your Slack is going off. What if you took 10 minutes to yourself without guilt? Can you imagine yourself doing that? And what excuse would immediately pop up? Yeah, I can't do it. They need me right now, but it's only 10 minutes. We're talking about a pause. We're not talking about leaving the whole office for the day or completely logging off. What would happen if you ignored that excuse that said, hey, I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to pause because I have to keep going. I'm in deep work mode right now. What would happen if you ignored that voice and pivoted, did something different? Um, I like to listen to Lori Santos. She has the Happiness Project podcast, and she talks about rest isn't indulgence, it's cognitive fuel, and it builds presence and resilience. So sit with that a little bit. If you think about it, like when I take my walk, I'm not wasting time. When I step away from my computer, I'm not wasting time. Instead, I am building my presence. I am building my resiliency. I'm refueling. Maybe it'll be a little easier to do it next time. So there's another cliche I want you to unlearn, and that one is no rest until the job is done. Here is a new truth. Rest is how the job gets done well. Mm, rest is how the job gets done well. I really like looking at these cliches and unlearning them because so many of them are just drilled into us. It's like, I have to do this, it has to get done. But what's one small rest you've denied yourself that could shift everything? One small rest. So I talked earlier about a few different examples of rest, like driving in silence, right? Every time, you know what? Back up. Often when people think about rest, they think it's a nap. If I'm rested, I'm taking a nap or I'm taking a long vacation. But we're talking about a small rest. And the example that comes to mind for me that was really hard to break through because I really love music and I enjoy using my time in the car as my time to crank up my playlist. But what if you drove in silence? How would that feel? Would it shift things? It could. So the last talking point I want to talk about is shifts that we can make to reclaim our energy and authority. The default currently is yes. Yes, I can take on that extra project. Yes, I know you want to change those inputs to outputs in that 12 tab financial model. I can get it done. You're saying that while cringing inside. But what if you flip from default yes to intentional power and realizing that every yes costs you something? So you need to make it count. So in that example, yes, sure, we can change that input to the output, but those 10 slides, we won't be able to deliver that. We could deliver maybe five flawlessly within the time that we have. You see how we're stepping into our power instead of, yeah, we'll get it done. Don't worry. So, another shift is from proving value to owning your voice. Sit with that. Now, if you own your voice, you realize that you already earned your seat. You earned that seat where you are. You earned where you are. But the confidence grows when you choose to be courageous first, right? That's speaking up, that's offering recommendations. In that example I just gave about talking about those slides and what can't be done because of this new ask, it's speaking up with intention and knowing with confidence that, hey, those 10 slides can't be delivered if that's truly the ask. Another shift I want us to think about is I'll rest later. I'll rest when it's done. We're going to shift from that to micro rest now. Rest now because clarity can come later from that rest. You find the time to take a pause. Burnout is not a badge of honor. And you know that if you don't take rests, micro breaks, burnout happens, but burnout also happens when you aren't aligned to yourself. So that's why in my workshops that I'll talk about later, we talk about finding rest or micro ways to rest, small patterns, small habits that really speak to you and what makes you happiest. Because who knows, maybe you hate to walk. Maybe you would rather curl up under a book and have some away time from everyone to recharge. I remember I once said no to a leadership task that I it was so hard to say no to, and I felt so guilty. I felt like dirt, to be honest, because I knew that everyone was counting on me. I knew that I had set the expectation that Sophia was the hero. Sophia can make it happen when other people give up. But by saying no, what does that make me look like? But that no, it gave me the space to pitch an idea that lit me up and got noticed. And that no actually saved me from not taking care of myself. It saved me from that granola bar, to be honest. It allowed me to actually go have a nice lunch to come back refreshed. It saved me from taking on a project that I knew we could not done in such a small period of time. So that no was powerful. And I led with that. And that's what I want us to think about here, right? Like, what's one yes that you've recently said yes to? You nodded your head, but it's drained you. Hmm. Think about that. What is one yes that you've given recently that's drained you? And what no that could create space for your brilliance? Think about that. Yes, sometimes I can think about it right now. I was asked to take on a project, and I said, you know what, let me come back to you. This project, it had so many, it looked easy on the surface, but once I looked at like all of the inputs that went into it, I had to say no. And in that space, I created more space for me to work on projects that I really do care about? Or how about my own work. Instead of helping someone else out on their project, helping them run it across the finish line, I just focus on my own work. So emotional fitness, it means aligning with our actions and getting those actions to align with our values, even when it's hard. And that's where the real power is and what real liberation looks like. What's one boundary that would change everything if you finally honored it? I, for me, I know that if I could keep a consistent deadline, not deadline, if I could keep a consistent bedtime, that would help me tremendously because I know that tomorrow starts with how I finish today. But I love to wrap things up in a bow because I feel like if I don't get it done today, I don't know what tomorrow holds. But also, if I make that shift, that micro rest shift, that proving my value shift, that default yes shift, if I know for a fact that, hey, I need to go to bed at 10 p.m. or else I will be sluggish tomorrow and I can't give my best self, that's where I need to start. And that's where I need to lead with. Often people think about boundaries as like this line, this hard line in the sand. If you cross this boundary, I will remind you kindly that you shouldn't have. There will be some repercussions. A lot of times when people think about boundaries, you think about it as force, as being very rude and aggressive, like, this is my non negotiable. I have to log off at 5 p.m. You got to leave me alone. But instead of thinking about a boundary that way, what if you saw it as a circle around the things that you hold nearest and dearest to you? So that could be like spending time with friends or getting a good night's rest of sleep or for me, it's roller skating, protecting my time to roller skate. Oh, it's a nice sunny day. Let me try to put some time in my calendar to get some skating in, right? But if you think about boundaries as a circle around the things that you want to protect, you show up differently because you want to protect your bedtime. You want to get home at a certain time. You want to log off at a certain time. You want to be present for that happy hour with friends or dinner with friends. It's easier to align your action with that value. At 3 o'clock, you actually start winding down. You start maybe closing down your email and not taking on new items because you want to wind down items, you want to log off on time, and you know that you can put placeholders in these things. So I just want to give you that food for thought there. What's one boundary would change everything if you finally honored it? Hmm. Man, I could stay there all day. But we got to close out here. You don't need to prove yourself anymore. Just remind yourself deep inside, you don't need to prove yourself anymore. You've done enough. You are already worthy and you're already powerful. You just need space, support, and a strategy to lead like the liberated woman you are becoming. This isn't about doing more. It's about becoming the woman who leads herself so powerfully. Everything around her shifts, her boundaries, her career, her presence. Now, if today's conversation hit home, I want you to know that I offer workshops for employee resource groups, one on one coaching, um, based on my signature framework, the liberated leader. DM me if you want to explore this work in your company or in your life. You've done enough proving. Now let's practice power with liberation as well. You can find me here on LinkedIn. And if you can also find me on Instagram at Gearing Together. Now, if you do follow me on LinkedIn, you will see that if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see me in your feed. So follow me if you see my profile there. I see a few comments. Oh, someone's saying, yes, I agree with that, Alicia. Alicia's saying it's a different way to think of boundaries. I like the softness, the circle adds to it. Yeah, I would completely agree. If you don't put a circle kind of has soft edges versus, that hard line that we often associate with boundaries. And that is just so hard to pivot against because, again, a boundary, where do we see boundaries? We see boundaries when it comes to what part of this state is yours and what part of this state is mine. What boundaries are in different places. But when you really think about boundaries with that circle or that soft edge, it helps you lead different. It helps you show up with different in energy. Oh, it looks like there's one more comment here. Let's see. Oh, I love these comments coming through. Yes, shifting from default yes to intentional power is a powerful statement. Yeah, yeah. When you switch from the default yes, I caught myself being an intentional people pleaser. Oh, it hurts to say it. I it's to me it wasn't so much being a people pleaser, it's just that I didn't want to let people down and I knew that there were expectations because they asked. And by making that default shift from yes to intentional power, it opened up time for me to pause, to think through, hey, what do I have on my plate, right? What are my personal deliverables? What am I supposed to get done first? And then it also helped me realize that this default yes will it'll cost me additional hours. It'll cost me that hot lunch. It'll cost me, 3 hours of extra work. What's the harm and having a dialogue about the yes? Maybe it's hard for you to flip from a default yes, right? But talking through it, having intentional power creates more of a dialogue instead of a automatic yes, I'll do it. It's okay, let me think through how we can do that. So it's it's a power shift. It's a shift to help you reclaim your energy and authority, but I really like it because it's a small pause, a small step that gets you there. Okay. All right. It looks like those are all the comments. Someone says, add another musical reference. Oh, that's so hard to do on the fly. Okay. So we have to conclude our time together. But again, if you in appreciated any of the comments or the thought exercises that we put together, I would encourage you to look at the men in the mirror, the man, the woman in the mirror, because we're asking you to change. We're asking you to pivot some of the ways that you do things, some of the ways that you see things to help you lead better and truly step into your power. You're liberated. We'll talk soon.